Hello and welcome to Sass Bites. This is your weekly bite of Sass during your lunch break. I'm Micah Godbolt. You can follow me down there. Follow Sass Bites at Sass Bites. You can catch all our previous episodes at youtube.com/sassbites as well. Follow the series we've been doing as well as just all the other shows and episodes, interviews and such we've done. As I said, series. We're in the fifth week of a series where we're putting together a grunt project, kind of building up a site using a lot of new tools and best practices, style guides and build processes and all that kind of fun stuff. So today, after we've built a few components this last week, I've added a few more in. We're actually going to dive into creating some layouts. Because the idea with components is a component is the smallest piece, breakdownable, repeated piece of your site. Like a blog news teaser is going to be the smallest that breaks down. Sure, you have stuff that makes that up. You may have the atomic pieces if you do Brad Frost atomic design stuff. You have the atomic pieces that make up that that I'm going to get it wrong, atoms and molecules that make up the molecules. But it's those molecules get repeated over and over again. You'll have like a blog roll that has 7 of those, that has maybe a title at the top and then 7 of those blog items. You have a gallery of videos, and so you have this gallery, but then you have all these individual videos inside of it. So these components we're building are those little repeatable pieces, the pieces that get repeated all through it. They can get combined and mixed and matched together. So what we now need is we need to step up one more level in our going from atoms to molecules to organisms. Again, if you follow Brad Frost, we need to create these organisms that we're going to actually combine all these things together in to give structure and typically to give layout. Because you have all of these, video teasers or these video thumbnails, but how do they get laid out? Like, are they in columns? Are they in rows? Do they have 3, then 2, then 3? Like, what's that layout for all these multiple pieces? And we don't want that whole thing to be our component. We want this components to still be those small pieces. So we need a way to be able to create these layouts and to put stuff into the layouts. And there's lots of ways to do it. Just depending on how you want to skin that cat. But we're going to talk about one where we're going to be creating little bands, little containers. These are a couple things that we're doing with Red Hat at the moment that are working really well for us. So I want to kind of show that off as well. So let's go ahead and dive into the code as we speak. All right, screen 2, 1. There we go. So as always, we're going to start out at the repo because it's great. You can just download stuff and run. Actually, I noticed I've got a couple issues in here, which is great. You guys are looking at it, running into issues and finding places where things can be improved. And I appreciate that. I will look into those. I unfortunately just saw them today, so I haven't had a chance to actually do them. But there were some install issues that I might be making system assumptions as to what's already installed, and those kind of things. So I will take a look into that. So we're going to again do. We're going to remove my old one, because I always do that. Download to make sure it's working, and then I forget to get rid of it. So we're going to get clone. That Git repo straight from there, Sassbites demo, and that's going to pull in. We're also going to cd into it, like I forgot to do earlier as well, and npm install. And someone said there was an issue when they did this install. I'm going to check into that and see if I can figure out what it is. That this should install pretty much perfectly for anyone that has Node installed. I think that all you need for this is you need Node installed, because that'll include npm. And that'll pull all the packages down, including Bower, which is used to pull in some other pieces. And then from there, you run grunt. And what grunt's going to do is it's going to run through a list of commands. It's going to install all the gems, which you do need bundler for. So if you don't have bundler installed, which is a Ruby gem, gem install bundler. Bundler is the dependency management for Ruby, but at least the most popular one. So I'd suggest doing that. It also runs Bower, pulls in a couple of Bower dependencies, and then compiles Sass, spins up our server. Everything is groovy. So it's going to go through. It's going to check our gems, which I think I'm even installing them locally. So it's actually going to go through, pull all of them, put them into the lib folder, so that we have them. We're using local ones. There's not an issue of system, like where it's trying to find those Ruby gems. Bower install runs, concat pulls the Bower, all the Bower together in a single JavaScript file. Everything builds, everything compiles, and we now have, if I can get rid of this, yes, we now have our site. So we're going to be dealing in the style guide, and let's go ahead and jump into that. Again, this is using Hologram, which I definitely, if you're interested in Hologram, and I haven't dove into it enough, I realize I really need to like do a full dive into Hologram because I'm really just kind of skimming the top. But I certainly plan on doing that because there's a lot to it that's really pretty cool. So as we had last week, I think I did this blog teaser. I might have styled it up a little bit. I pushed a little bit of stuff this last week because we're getting to this point where every week I make some pretty large changes. I need to tweak this, tweak this, tweak this. So I'm just pushing all these up. I don't think I'm going to be able to really do all this, like all the changes live, just because there's so many little things I need to change to make all this work. So here's our blog teaser. You can see it works like that in a wide mode. And I also using EQJS have it pop into the smaller stack layout once it gets under 400 pixels. You can see that right here with the data EQJS. I could probably do a whole episode on EQJS as well. It's a pretty cool little plugin. Go check it out. Snugug is awesome. Thank you, dude. All right. So I've also done something with a popular video, really similar. I just got video stuff out to the side for details, and then when it gets smaller, it's a little overlay. It's not styled yet. It's kind of ugly. I'm going to do styling at the end, but really it's a matter of just positioning that it moves inside of the image like that when it's smaller. And lastly, I did a little guy with a newsletter sign up. So we've got sign up here. You put in your email address. You can click on a couple of these to choose which newsletters you want to sign up for. And again, that one also breaks under 500 pixels to be stacked. And again, I'm using EQJS because I could hypothetically do this with media queries. But what I want it to do is I want these things to pop and change depending on where they're put into. Like if they're put into a smaller container or a smaller column, I want those things to break. And that's what we're going to actually be doing today, is looking at those columns. So the first thing I want to do is talk about a media gallery concept. And this is relatively simple as far as I'm not putting a whole bunch of like thought into, at least I don't know about thought, but not a lot of craziness into this. In the Red Hat project, we actually have a lot more to it. It's a little bit more of a complex system. But with this, I just want to support a couple of layouts. So what I'm going to do is I've got this concept of a media gallery, which you can see right here. And this is a layout. This is basically kind of like wrapper markup that you can put components into. And I'm mocking up each of these components by just putting in a div that says component. Because what that div is doesn't matter. That's just going to be your actual component code plugged into that. But you see, I've got a gallery. Sorry, my wrapper class that could be 100% of the page if you want. We're doing that with Red Hat, or it could just fit inside the container if you need to. I'm also going to pass in a little data attribute. I love data attributes for this because they're not a class. They're not something that it has any semantic value. It's purely data that's you're passing from the DOM into CSS. You're going to see how that works in a little bit. And also, this gives us the ability to do a title as well. And then we have all of our items. So boom, 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 boom. So the way that's going to work is gallery layout. Hey, I found it. Is you see I've got this the same setup here with Hologram. I've got all my documentation in line. And what I'm going to do with this is here's my media gallery items. I don't want to have to put styles onto each component inside of the gallery because I don't know if it's going to be blog items. I don't know if it's going to be video items or a mix of them. So I go a little bit generic in here where I say it's any child div. I've gone so far as to do any child star. If you don't know if you're using divs or sections or articles or whatever going into there. And there's a lot of talk about the star selector not being the most horrible thing in the world. So don't fear it. But if you do fear it, I'm just going to use div. And we just need to assume that all of our components are going to be divs. We got little margin bottoms to push everything down. You can see that. I'm actually using the same value as the gutter. This is kind of a nice thing with Suzy is you can actually call the gutter as a function and return a percentage value. So you can see we've got these nice, like this space right here is a nice square. So that's really cool. So what I'm going to do is my data layout 4, when I have a data layout 4, and then this ampersand means this whole selector right here. So that's popping in right in there. So data value 4, media gallery items div. And and I'm going to do a gallery of 4. This is another Suzy convention, where instead of setting your columns and then doing your nth columns and all that kind of stuff, you just say gallery of 4. And that basically means every item inside that gallery is going to have 4 columns. So you see I have 4 columns here, I've got 6 columns here, 3 columns there, and we'll see that in play in just a little bit. Data layout of 4, so this means it's going to be basically a 3-up like we actually see at the moment. And I'm only going to do that inside of 700 pixels for the breakpoint. And this is using the breakpoint module, which I know we have done some talks about. I could probably do a little more of a deep dive, but that's a great little plugin for easily handling your breakpoints. You can basically pass anything you want into that, and it handles it really well. And then I'm going to include that gallery 4 in that breakpoint. So that means is when I have this data layout of 4, that my media gallery items will lay out in 4 columns apiece, like you see in here. And if I go under so many pixels, that layout disappears. So they just drop down, and I've got this nice layered list like that. And I can easily change this from 700 to, if I want to do like 500. Going to run, wait for it to flash. I think that worked. All right. Yep, so we can get a little bit lower. We can get down about 500 before it pops. So that's very cool. And again, this is a layout, so we're going to kind of assume like this layout's going to be like a full width guy, because this media gallery items, you might do the EQJS. That gets a little bit nuts when you got EQJS inside EQJS. Might be a little wary of that. So know kind of the size of this media gallery component. If you can assume they're all 100% of the page, that's always awesome. Otherwise, your mileage may vary. Just be aware of that. So there we go. So we got the gallery 4 that breaks at 500. We're going to put it back at 700. We can also change this to gallery 3. So just by changing the data attribute in here, we can change from one layout to another layout. It's still the same component. It's still the same class. All of that's still the same of what it is. That's why I don't really want to put it in there as a class. I don't want to change the classes of it. I just wanted to be able to pass that data attribute through. So you can see here at over 650, we've got a 4-up layout. And then when you drop below, we've got a 6 column, so 2-up layout. And then when you get below 650, it drops down to that. So we've got 2 different layouts that have very different properties, depending on if we say it's a data layout of 3 or data layout of 4. So that's pretty cool. So let's see this in practice. Once I get this back in here, which I have right below. Oops, here we go. So this is one little thing that I've done here. I've named this media gallery layout. I've given this this documentation in hologram a name, which means gallery examples. When I go to this examples, I can say the parent is the media gallery layout. So what this is going to do is it's going to take this media gallery layouts, because this is just the documentation page. It's a big documentation page. And it's going to put it below this main one. And this is nice because it enforces that this is on top and this is a child of it. And I think this actually, the title is actually a little bit different. It's like an H1. This is an H2 or something. So you could even style them a little bit differently. But it enforces these are below, which is really nice because we don't want this to pop to the top. These are just examples. So here we have an example. Here is that media gallery title again. And then we've got a bunch of these little teasers. So this is that content being fit into it. And again, I can change from the 4 layout to the 3 layout. And this example is going to change for that too. Wait for it. There we go. So that's when it's 650 to 850, and here's over 850. It does that. And here's the other thing. Actually, we didn't get a chance to see yet. Is that this also takes into account those element queries. So here we're always and is that quite okay? Yeah, we're always under 400 pixels for this. So this is like just about 400 pixels. Once we get to right here, we get under 400 pixels, and this is when it drops into its side layout. So it has nothing to do with the media query. This is all about EQJS and doing this. And if I got the numbers just perfect, I could show it to you where it would pop here as well. And actually, let me go and do that. I'll drop this down to like 300. We should see it drop here too, because it gets wide enough that it drops down to that the not laid out. There we go. So you can see here, we don't have enough space for it to lay out, to spread out into that, that wider format. But when we get to here, oh, we're good, we're good, we're good. Oh, that's getting too small. Where is it? Right there. So that's getting too small. So at that point, we pop to this, to this layered thing. And then if we're at a different breakpoint, where it's, again, a full width, it goes back to that wider layout because you have enough space. So that's the joy of the EQJS, is that your components have their own little media query built in, so that it'll fit properly into whatever space you give it, rather than having to rely on some kind of like full page media query or something like that. So that's really cool. But let's go ahead and let's do one other thing. The really nice thing about these components is it means that it doesn't have to all be the same, like just this one component inside of it. And the reason I'm not making a like blog gallery as a component, I'm making a media gallery that you can put things into, because I could go into my components, my video, and grab this guy. And let's see, I'll change this blog teaser right here. Let's do this one. It'll be easier to know when it stops. And we'll change that to a video. So I can just drop this component in, and I know the component's going to fit into its space because it's always just fits 100%. It's going to also behave properly so that when it gets under, let's change this one to 300 as well. So then when it gets under a certain size, it can change to a different layout. And we know it's always going to fill up its space properly, which is awesome. So we get down here, and it pops to that layout. And then when it gets here, it drops to its wide layout as well. So it has all that flexibility, all that power, all built into the component. And you can just put it into these layouts. You don't have to worry about building the layout to work with these components. So we can have kind of these dumb layouts. These are just like, multi-column layouts that maybe give you some titles and some other metadata or something. And you can just drop components into it. And just to be crazy as well, let's go ahead and take our newsletter sign up. And copy you and go into here and swap out this blog teaser, paste that in, and now you know what those all those comments are for. So I know when things start and stop. All right, so we can see that this newsletter fits right inside of this. And oh, it even clears. Oh, I guess it's the bottom. It would also, everything clears properly and all that, so you don't have to worry about stuff getting stuck. So you can see that fits in perfect. It fills up the whole space. When it gets to a little bit wider, I think I only have the wide thing here. There we go. When it's wide enough, it'll spread out to 2 pieces. So all of these components can fit together without any trouble. They're not going to bump into each other. They're not going to interact with each other improperly. It's a really great system to be able to combine things together. Obviously, this probably isn't we want to combine together in a media gallery, but this gives you that flexibility just to build components and then put the components together and not worry about how they're supposed to interact. All right, so that's a media gallery layout, or what we always also say with bands on Red Hat. We have this band that we're going to put pieces into. We want to have a layout inside of it. But there's one other thing we often want to do is we often want to put things together and combine them into like a kind of a context. Maybe put some decorations around it, and really what this comes down to is what we call a card. So we're building cards. And what we want to be able to do is not necessarily layout. It's really just combining a couple pieces together inside of this context, this card. Maybe it has a different color theme. Maybe it has a different background colors or images or those kind of things. We just want to combine those together and have that background, and then be able to take that card and do anything we want with it. So here's an example of that. Let's just take a quick look at our card layout. And it's really simple. It's just, we have a card, we've got a theme this time, so I can pass themes to it. We have a dark theme or a light theme, which is really nice. And then again, it gives us an option for a title, and we could have a couple things up there if you need to have some other metadata. It's no problem. But then again, you have a set of items, and this items are right here. And the main thing we want to do with this, besides some clear fix to make sure that all these floated items fit in. I must have floated something sometime. Anyway, we also have some things for dark themes. So when it's dark, this is going to be have a different background color, as well as this title is going to have a different. It's going to be white when the background theme is dark. And then the main thing is down here at the bottom, is that our card items, again, caret div, or if you really want to just do a star, you can do that. We're going to give those all a margin bottom, except for the last one. We're going to not put a margin bottom on. If you've read the lobotomized owls axiomatic CSS, you can also do something like this with your margin top, which I've wanted to try sometime because that's a really cool tool as well. Anyway, go check that. It's on List Apart. It's a cool article, an interesting idea of how to do vertical rhythm. So that's how we're giving this space. So you just pop components in here and they all lay out. And this brings up a really good point of your components should never have any assumptions about how they lay out. Like they shouldn't assume, oh, I need to push something. I need to have a margin bottom on my component so that pushes stuff down. It's like, no, don't ever. Like it's got its box. It never interacts outside of its box, which gives you the ability to just lay everything out really consistently. And that's really what we're trying to do here. So let's go ahead and do an example of that. Again, I have to create another example card or example partial with some documentation. And you can see we can create a single card that has all of these different components are going to react to their element query. And another, actually, this is a cool thing. I'm going to show this real quick. Since we have padding here, you'll notice these actually go out to the edges. And this is kind of a fun little trick. The challenge is we've got padding around everything. And so we need to actually bleed these images out. And I've done that. This is actually something I've updated. Up their videos here. There we go. So when it's in a card and it's not, this is kind of a messy one because there's not a data attribute for the bottom where where a data attribute hasn't kicked in yet. So I have to do this little not thing. I'm hoping Snug can fix that and give me something I can just use as a class. But basically what I'm doing is I'm extending this little bleeding container, which just does negative margins to pull it out. You can see when I don't extend that, what happens on the video right here. Since the video is just 100% of its component, it just goes to the edges like it normally would. And stylistically, we probably want those images going to the edges. So we've got this idea of a bleeding container. I mean, we did the same thing, or I did the same thing with the image. Is it just image? With the image embed, wherever that one is. Oh, sorry, it's not an image embed. That's sorry, wrong one. Inside here. So we're also extending that right here. So when it's in a card and it's not the EQ state, so when that state hasn't kicked in, because I don't want that goofing with our sideways, with this layout. But when it's in that state, then we pop the margins out so it spreads out to the side, and we're just using margin left and margin right, negative margin left, margin right. So we're able to get this to work. So it's really great. We can take all these components and we can toss them in here. And they all stack up nice. They've all got the vertical rhythm to them, separation between each one of them. And then what you also do, and this is, I guess, kind of what I was trying to get to with here, is you can pass these contexts down into the components. So if a component wants to support when I'm in a card, because cards often have, cards have these padding, I can now support when I'm in a card, I will do this. So rather than the card, like, doing stuff to the children inside of it, like imposing styles on its components, we basically create contexts that all of these components can react to, and that's really kind of the beauty of what we're creating here. So just as one crazy last act, and I did not demo this yet, so let's see if I can get it to work. Apparently that's off. There we go. I want to take a card, so we're going to go layout. I'm going to take my card. My card example, bunch of cards. Okay, card example, and I'm going to go back out to my media layout, to my example, and let's go down to here. Where's my items? And I want to do a bunch of cards, and hopefully I got the right ones. There we go. So with it, we can also do multiple cards inside of our layouts. So that's another thing about cards, is they don't make any assumptions about what's around them or what happens below them or any of those kind of things. which means that when we go and try and put them in a layout, in a media gallery layout, they work just fine. Now let's go ahead and change this to a 3 or a 4 column, since you only have 3 in there. So these cards can work inside of these layouts as well. So it's a system of like larger layouts, smaller like context cards and those types of things, and then be able to put components inside of that. And of course, this is ugly and hideous. I really haven't created anything beautiful yet, but you can see how all these components can be put together into card structures, into layout structures, and they'll all fit together. We're not trying to just override tons of stuff. They all behave in their environment properly. So anyway, that's what we have here. I've already pushed all of this up to Git. So if you want to pull this down and take a look at it, I don't have like this in here. You're gonna have to copy and paste yourself. But this is what's happening. And this is a good time to point out. There's one thing I haven't done here, and I don't know if maybe I'll do it down the road. What you see is a lot of copying and pasting of markup. And anytime you have copy and pasting of markup, you got to go, oh, that's going to be nasty. What happens when I've created all these examples with, with my my blog teaser, and then I change the markup for my blog teaser? What's going to happen to all those other examples? Well, they break, obviously, because we can't. We just copied and pasted over there. So one thing that we're doing with Red Hat is we're actually using a templating engine called Swig. Really similar to Twig, pretty similar to Handlebars, pretty similar to really a lot of the templating engines out there. And we're actually taking all of our documentation and passing it through a templating engine so that we can actually create little templates and then just place those templates all over through our examples and our documentation. It's a really great tool. I'm actually going to be talking about that next week, or talking about a little bit of that next week, and which also means I'm not going to be here. Next week is a Sass Summit. And I'll be going over kind of a lot of this. I'm going to kind of take this to its completion and give a full rundown of the build system and all the components and all that, how all that works. So if you're coming to Sass Summit, I will see you there next Thursday. If you're not, you totally should, because I won't be here. I'm going to be busy doing that all day. But check that out. You can use the coupon code MICAH, just MICAH, to believe 20. I don't want to do the number. I know you get a discount, whatever that main discount is. I don't want to quote it and be wrong. So check that out. Check out the GitHub repo. Please feel free to throw in pull requests. Throw in if you see anything wrong. Throw in any issues if you have questions or concerns about the code. So I will take a look at those and try and get back to them as soon as possible. So again, thanks for hanging out. Next week we'll be off. We'll be at Sass Summit. I'll continue from where we are here. The week after that, after Sass Summit. So we'll just keep trucking and start building up all these components and maybe actually get to a live site eventually. That's honestly not my concern. I really want to try and build all these pieces out and maybe even testing. That's gonna be the fun part. So we'll see you again in a couple weeks and hopefully see you next week at Sass Summit. So thanks again for sticking around. I've got a little bit wordy this time, which normally happens. And we'll see y'all next week. Thanks a lot.